63 years old the day I stood on my own front porch and couldn't get inside. Not because I lost my key, not because the lock was broken, because my daughter had changed it while I was gone. Let me back up a little. Because this story doesn't start on that porch. It starts about 6 weeks before, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, when my daughter called me and said, "Mum, you need a vacation. You've been running yourself ragged since Daddy passed. Come stay with us in Tucson for a few weeks. The grandkids want to see you." And God help me, I believed her. My husband Earl had died 14 months earlier. Pancreatic cancer. The kind that doesn't give you time to argue with it. Here one season, gone the next. We'd been married 41 years. He handled the house accounts, the insurance files, the property taxes. I handled the restaurant. We had a small soul food place in Decatur, Georgia. Nothing fancy, just a corner spot that Earl's mother started back in 1971. We'd kept it running for decades. It wasn't making us rich, but it was ours. The building was ours. The name was ours. After Earl died, I was drowning in paperwork I didn't fully understand, grieving in a house that still smelled like his aftershave, and trying to keep the restaurant from falling apart without him. My daughter, she's my only child, had moved to Tucson with her husband 3 years before. They had 2 boys, 7 and 9 years old. I missed those kids more than I could say. So when she called and said, "Come," I went. I packed 2 suitcases, asked my assistant manager Theodora to hold things down, and drove to Atlanta to catch my flight. My daughter picked me up from Tucson International, smiling wide, boys bouncing in the back seat, and for about the first 4 days it was exactly what she promised. Sunshine, home-cooked dinners, laughing until my sides hurt watching those boys chase each other through the backyard. But somewhere around day 5 things started to feel different. My son-in-law got quiet, not rude, just quiet in a way that has weight to it, like a room where someone's been arguing before you walked in. I'd come downstairs in the morning and conversations would stop. My daughter started taking phone calls in the bedroom with the door shut. Once I walked past and heard her say, "Just give me a little more time." I didn't ask. I should have. On the morning of day 9, my daughter came to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. She looked tired. Not vacation tired. Tired in the bones. "Mom," she said, "I need to talk to you about something." She told me that she and her husband had been having financial trouble, that his contracting business had hit some problems, a client dispute, some unpaid invoices, a piece of equipment that had broken down and cost them badly. She said they'd fallen behind on their mortgage and were looking at real trouble if they didn't get something worked out soon. I listened. I held her hand. I told her I was sorry. Then she said, "There's a program that helps small business owners in situations like ours, but we'd need someone to co-sign some refinancing paperwork to qualify. Just as a formality, Mum. Your name wouldn't really mean anything on it. It's just a credit check thing." I was 63 years old and I had just lost my husband, and I wanted more than anything to be useful to my child. I said yes. We went to an office the next morning. Her husband drove. It was a real office, carpeted, framed certificates on the wall, a man in a pressed shirt who smiled and called me Mrs. Hargrove and slid a stack of papers across the desk. My daughter sat beside me. She kept leaning over and pointing to the signature lines. "Just here, Mom, and here." I didn't read it carefully. I want to be honest about that, because some of you watching this are going to shake your heads at me, and I understand. I didn't read it. I trusted my child. I signed where she pointed. We were back at the house by noon. 3 days later, she told me I should probably head home soon. Said the boys were getting into their school routine and the house was feeling crowded. Said it with a smile, but her eyes were somewhere else entirely. I wasn't offended. I booked a flight for that Friday. Friday morning came. She drove me to the airport, hugged me at the curb, told me she loved me. Her husband wasn't there, said he had a job site to get to. I wheeled my bags inside, checked in, went through security, and sat at my gate with a paperback I wasn't really reading. We boarded. I flew home to Atlanta. I took the shuttle to the long-term parking lot where my car had been sitting for 9 days, loaded up my suitcases, and drove the 20 minutes back to Decatur. It was a Thursday afternoon, grey and a little cold. the kind of Atlanta February day that can't decide if it wants to rain or not. I pulled into my driveway, got out, rolled one suitcase to the front door, put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. I thought maybe I was tired from the flight, not lining it up right. I tried 3 more times. The key wouldn't catch. The lock had been changed. My own front door and the key I'd carried for 11 years did not work anymore. I stood there on my porch for a long moment. I remember the concrete was cold under my feet and the sky above me was the color of dirty dishwater. I thought, there must be some mistake. I thought, maybe the lock seized up while I was gone. I thought a lot of things that weren't the truth because the truth was too large to look at directly. I called my daughter. She didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. I called her husband. His phone went straight to voicemail. I sat down on my front steps with my suitcase beside me, and I called Theodora at the restaurant. She picked up on the second ring, and when I told her I couldn't get into my house, she went quiet for just a second too long. "Miss Hargrove," she said carefully, "have you talked to your daughter lately? Like, in the last few days?" I said I'd just been with her for 9 days. Theodora was quiet again. Then she said, "Some people came into the restaurant about a week ago, said they were with a property management company. They said they were doing an assessment of the building on behalf of the new owner." The world went sideways. I didn't even remember getting in my car, but I was driving. I drove to the restaurant because my body knew where to go, even when my mind was dissolving. I pulled up and sat in the parking lot for probably 10 minutes before I could make myself go inside. Theodora met me at the door. She put her arms around me and didn't say anything, which was exactly right, because there was nothing to say yet. She showed me the card the property management people had left. It had a company name on it I didn't recognize. She showed me the letter that had been taped to the back door 2 days ago, official-looking, with legal language about transfer of ownership and notification to current tenants and employees. Tenant. They called us tenants in our own building. I sat in the booth in the back corner, where Earl and I used to eat dinner on Sunday nights when the restaurant was closed and quiet, and I tried to understand what had happened. It took me a long time and a lot of phone calls over the following days to piece it all together. What my daughter had handed me in that carpeted office was not refinancing paperwork for her husband's business. It was a deed transfer. My daughter's husband had found someone. I still don't know who, and I may never know who helped them construct documents that transferred the restaurant property into a holding company they controlled. The co-signer lines I'd signed were not co-signer lines. And when I called an attorney 3 days later and sat across from him with the copies Theodora had managed to get, he looked at those papers for a long time before he looked up at me. "Mrs. Hargrove," he said, "you signed over the deed." I had also apparently signed a quitclaim on the house. Both properties, the restaurant that Earl's mother had built in 1971, the house where I'd raised my daughter, where her father had taken his last breath in the hospital bed we'd set up in the living room. Both of them. Gone in an afternoon while I sat in a carpeted office thinking I was helping. Now, here is where I have to tell you something. Because you might be expecting me to say that I had no idea what was coming, that I was blindsided entirely when I got home from Tucson. But that's not quite true. I have not told you yet about the weeks before my daughter called, about the fact that 3 months after Earl died, when I was deep in grief and completely disoriented, I had started working with a woman named Constance, a financial advisor at our bank, a sharp and patient woman who had been gently helping me understand everything Earl used to handle. Constance was the one who first sat down with me and said, "Let's make sure everything is properly titled. Let's make sure you know exactly what you own and how you own it." And it was Constance who had, about a month before the Tucson trip, flagged something unusual, a title inquiry on the restaurant property. She couldn't tell me more than that. It wasn't enough to be alarming on its own, but she'd mentioned it, and it had stuck in the back of my mind, like a splinter I couldn't find. I hadn't said anything to my daughter. I'd told myself I was being paranoid, but I had done one thing very quietly, 2 weeks before I flew to Tucson. I had called Constance and asked her to help me put both the restaurant and the house into a revocable living trust, my name only, no beneficiaries named yet. just properly, legally sheltered. The paperwork was finalized on a Wednesday. I flew to Tucson the following Monday. What my daughter and son-in-law had gotten from me in that office was not nothing. It was real, and it was serious, and my attorney has since made clear that they had committed fraud. The documents they had me sign were real documents with real legal intention behind them. But what they did not know, what they could not have known because I had not told anyone, was that the underlying title had already been moved. The deed they thought they were acquiring was, legally, already superseded. My attorney called it a cloud on the title. Their documents were a fraudulent attempt to transfer property that I no longer held in my name in the same way. The trust protected me, not perfectly, not without a long, expensive, exhausting legal fight that I am still not entirely through, but it protected me. I found out about the lock on my house because they had, separately, hired a locksmith and changed it while I was in Tucson. They had moved some of their belongings in boxes in the garage, some furniture in the spare room. They had apparently told the neighbors I was moving into assisted living. My neighbor across the street, a retired schoolteacher named Harriet, no wait, her name is Vivienne Oakes. She'd lived across from me for 22 years. She called me that evening. She'd seen my car in the driveway and then seen me leave, and something hadn't sat right with her. When I told her what was happening, she came outside immediately in her house slippers and stood with me on the porch while I called a locksmith of my own. It took 45 minutes and a copy of my ID and the trust documents on my phone to get back into my own house. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was that Earl's chair, his recliner, the brown leather one he'd had for 15 years, the one that still had the slight indent where he always sat, had been moved to the corner, and there was a box of my son-in-law's work boots next to the couch. I sat in Earl's chair, and I cried for a while, not because I was broken, because I was angry and I was tired, and sometimes those things come out as tears, whether you want them to or not. Then I called my attorney. Then I called the non-emergency police line. Then I called Constance. Then I ate a bowl of cereal because I hadn't eaten all day, and Vivian had come inside with me and was making tea at my kitchen counter like she'd done it 100 times, which I think is one of the kindest things a person can do, to show up and make tea without being asked. My daughter called back that night at 9:47. I know the time because I looked at the clock when I saw her name. I did not answer. She left a voicemail. I have not listened to it. My attorney has it now. What happened over the following weeks was ugly and slow in the way that legal things always are. My son-in-law's attorney sent letters. My attorney sent letters back. There were threats and counter-threats and a morning I spent on the phone for 4 hours that I would rather not relive. The property management company they'd hired backed out when the title issues became clear. 2 of the people involved in drawing up the fraudulent documents have since been reported to the state bar. And the restaurant, my restaurant, Earl's mother's restaurant, is still open. Theodora held it together while all of this was happening, kept the staff calm, kept the doors open, did not tell the regulars what was going on. She is, without question, one of the best people I have ever known. My grandchildren, the boys, 7 and 9, I think about them every single day. I don't know what they've been told. I don't know what they understand. I sent them birthday cards in March. I don't know if they got them. That is the part of this that I cannot think about for too long without having to put something down and walk away. My daughter and I have not spoken. I don't know if we ever will. I've had people say to me, "But she's your daughter," as if that fact changes the other facts, as if blood is a kind of explanation. I don't have an answer for that. I'm 63 years old and I'm still working on it. What I know is this. I almost lost everything because I wanted to believe my child loved me the way I loved her. I almost lost the restaurant that an old woman built with her hands before I was even born. I almost lost the house where I raised my family and said goodbye to my husband. I almost lost it because someone I trusted put papers in front of me and I didn't read them. Read the papers. I know that sounds like a small thing. It isn't. Read everything. Call an attorney before you sign anything you don't completely understand. I'm not a lawyer and I am not a financial advisor, and I am not telling you that your family would do what mine did. I'm telling you that I wish I had done things differently. And I'm telling you the one thing that went right was a quiet Tuesday afternoon months before any of this happened, when I sat down with Constance at the bank and said, "Help me understand what I have." That afternoon is why I still have anything to come home to. I'm sitting in Earl's recliner right now, as I tell you this. The locksmith put a new deadbolt on the front door, and I have the only key. Vivienne came over last Sunday and we had coffee on the porch and watched the neighbor's dog chase a squirrel up a tree, and she made me laugh, for real, the kind that reaches your eyes. The restaurant opens at 11 every morning, Tuesday through Sunday. Theodora gets there at 9. I try to get there by 9:30. We're still making the cornbread the way Earl's mother made it. Cast iron, not too sweet. People have been coming in for 50 years for that cornbread. I don't intend to let them down. Some days are still very hard. Some mornings I wake up and the anger is right there, sitting on my chest before I've even opened my eyes. Some days I miss my daughter. Not who she turned out to be, but who I thought she was, who I believe she was for 39 years. That particular grief doesn't have a name I found yet. But I am still here. The doors are still open. And if you are out there caring for everything that somebody you love left behind, tending to it by yourself, trying to do right by it, please, please be careful. Not everyone around you is tending it too. Some of them are waiting for you to stop paying attention. I've thought a lot about the moment I sat in that carpeted office and signed my name without reading a single word on those pages. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because that moment is the one I keep returning to, turning it over like a stone, trying to understand what it cost me and what it taught me. What my daughter did was wrong. That's not a complicated statement, but it took me a long time to be able to say it plainly, without softening it, without adding, "But she must have been desperate," or, "But I know she loves me somewhere." The truth is what it is. She made a choice to deceive me. Her husband helped her make it. And the consequences of that choice, the attorneys, the letters, the long nights, the grandchildren I don't know how to reach, those are not my consequences to carry alone. They belong to the people who set them in motion. That is simply how things work, not as punishment from somewhere above, but as the plain, ordinary result of actions taken in this world. You build something with deception and it does not hold. It cannot. The ground underneath it is already unstable before the first stone is laid. What I want to say to anyone watching this is something I wish someone had said to me earlier, not just about protecting your assets, though yes, please protect your assets, but about what it means to be a person of genuine character when the people around you are not. Constance, my advisor at the bank, is not a dramatic person. She sits across a desk and asks careful questions and listens to the answers. She didn't save me by being brilliant or lucky. She saved me by being thorough and honest, and by doing her job with real integrity, even when no one was watching. That's what good character actually looks like, not grand gestures, just doing the right thing carefully over time. And Vivienne, who came outside in her house slippers at dusk to stand beside me on a porch that should have been mine, she didn't have to do that. She owed me nothing. She came because that is who she is. That is the kind of person she has spent a lifetime becoming. I spent 39 years believing I was raising someone like that. What I know now is that the work of becoming that kind of person never really stops. It's not something you finish. It's not something you hand to your child and walk away. I had to be smart enough to listen when Constance flagged something that didn't sit right. I had to be strong enough to act on it quietly, without confrontation, without knowing for certain what was coming. And I had to be decent enough afterward to let Theodora keep her job and keep her dignity and keep showing up to a restaurant that almost wasn't ours anymore. The restaurant is still open. That matters to me more than I can say, not because of the money, because Earl's mother built it and we kept it, and I intend to keep it still. I am 63 years old. I am not done, and neither, I suspect, are you.